Thanks, Daria. Yeah, lovely to be here. I really enjoyed the presentation so far. I think I will still use some of the slides if you can put up the presentation in the background. But not all of them because I have less time now, but that's all right because actually a few things were already covered. So yeah, this is just my affiliations. We are a EU funded project. I feel like I should say that. And we work with T&I on public futures. So if you could skip to the next slide, please. This is a sort of slide that I think is no longer needed because we are actually all very well informed about remunicipalisation. This is just the working definition we use on the top there. And another point to make here is that even when we see deprivatizations happen in different ways, either through sort of outright political struggle or on a more quiet level. And I think we've heard presentations today that discussed various of these ways. We still see it as part of a continued struggle as a political or ideological struggle against neoliberalism. So I just wanted to stress that because this approach also underlines our involvement with the Public Futures database and obviously with working together with our partners, including PSI and Daria, and also the sort of transnational institute. So if you could then go over to the next slide, thank you. So this is a bit of the background in Public Futures database, which can be found at publicfutures.org. But obviously, I think Daria has posted the link in the chat. It will also be at the end of the presentation. And this is a database of deprivatization of public services at different scales, which came up in our breakout group as well. So we capture remunicipalizations, renationalizations, as well as what we call municipalizations, which are sort of instances where communities set up resources or services or infrastructures that aren't provided because the market sort of ignores them. And there's no profit to be made, so it doesn't exist. And these are interesting for us as well, obviously, for the political implications. One example there is community pharmacies that have been set up in Chile because people couldn't access medications or healthcare services, basic healthcare services. So as Daria said, actually the current version of Public Futures was launched in early 2021 in February, but the case collection built on long-standing work by T&I. There were multiple instances of publications written by the Transnational Institute or published by the Transnational Institute in collaboration with partners. And one of them was 2019. There were other texts in 2017, but it actually goes back all the way to 2007, which it began with collection of cases in the water sector. But now we have 1,582 cases as of yesterday in the database across 56 countries and 12 sectors. We keep finding new cases, and this is mainly due to the fact that partner organizations still submit cases, and a lot of unions are already involved. A lot of them are here today as well, so PSI and APSU, but also Fagforbundet, FNV, QP, FOA in Denmark. So these unions help us collect cases and put them into the database of their own remunicipalisation efforts. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight a few trends today very quickly. One of them is that we see a geographic spread in the cases. You can still see, obviously, that a lot of the cases are located in Central Western Europe, with a few cases in Southern Europe and Northern Europe as well, and then a big cluster in the United States, which is quite interesting for us. But we also see more and more cases come in from South and Latin America, Australia, and in Asia Pacific. And the rest, we know that this isn't the full picture. We are well aware of the limitations of this database, even though it is the most comprehensive deprivatization database. It is only one that is run by researchers, activists, unionists who have a limited capacities, we are aware, to contribute to this. So in a way, this presentation is a bit of a call to action. If you have information of remunicipalisation and insourcing, to please fill this in, because we are aware it's a global phenomenon, and this is really a tool for us, a political tool and a research tool to capture the spread of remunicipalisation trends, which we know is sort of far-reaching. Yeah, sectoral diversification. is the same sort of idea behind that. First cases that were really well known were water and energy cases, but we do see now loads more cases coming up, and we have heard a lot about them today. Healthcare and social services, local government services, telecommunications, especially a big thing in the US, waste remunicipalizations, but also sort of more smaller sectors for now. Criminal justice and housing, as well as postal services, have recently been added. So it's across the board of public sector services and infrastructures that we see de-privatization trends happening. If you can go to the next slide, please. Yes, I think I've talked a bit about this. We've heard a lot about the UK cases. There's one thing to say here is that it's interesting for us to see how these sectoral diversification trends are also linked to different institutional policies or constitutional context. So, for example, in Germany, we see a lot of remunicipalizations, especially in the energy sector. This is strongly linked to the Energiewende, which is the strong energy transition policies of successive German governments, but also the fact that in Germany, local authorities, unlike in the UK or the US, have retained a lot of powers to remunicipalize, and these are being used again. We see similar sort of public service ideals and ethos in France. I recently learned about a Dutch sort of such a term and ethos that explains, why public services are still sort of desirable. And for us as a research project, we are looking into that and looking into how remunicipalization and de-privatization is underpinned by different constitutional legislative contexts and their sort of less clearly defined logics and politics. But yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, this is something that I wanted to touch on briefly because I think it underpins once again our definition of remunicipalization as a sort of part of a movement against neoliberal capitalism. And that is because even though we have even more limited data, only for about half the cases in our database, we have data on motivations. So you can see 766 is the number that this statistic is on. But what is quite clear is that a lot of the concerns are about quality of service provision, as well as cost reduction. So unlike the neoliberal maxim that if the market does it, it will be cheaper, it will be more efficient, and it will be better, we see that actually this hasn't been the case. Quality of service has gone down, working condition and health and safety concerns for workers have, well, gone down and gone up, respectively. Sorry for phrasing that weirdly. And the cost for service users has gone up. But what we also find is interesting is that especially, I guess, since certain successive crises like the financial crisis and with the COVID pandemic, what we see, what motivates remunicipalizations is the third sort of strongest motivator is democratic and public control. So there is a real interest to bring services and infrastructures back into public ownership. Okay, next slide, please. I will unfortunately have to skip over this, I think. This is something, though, that I have been working on with Daria. We have been doing research together, and I just want to say we will be publishing something on this very soon. So hopefully you can find it later on in writing. And then last slide, please, or next slide. To the conclusions. Yeah, just to reinforce this message that the Public Futures Database is the most comprehensive collection we have of de-privatization cases across the world, but it has limitations. It's just a tip of the iceberg. And we think that as a research tool, it could help us understand remunicipalization, de-privatization better, but it can also just generally as a political tool help challenge these established pro-privatization and pro-liberalization policies, and it can contribute to build a stronger narrative for the public and a more solid evidence base if we find more cases, if we put them into the database. And I think it can really also be a tool that helps unionists and obviously other stakeholders too, to achieve remunicipalisation by learning from cases in the same sector or in the same country, and sort of build a best practice scenario of how to do remunicipalisation properly. And then the last side is just in case you have questions or want to get in touch. And there are a few links, but also Daria can provide these. So thank you.